Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about the general elections that are going to be coming up in a couple of days from now, and more specifically we're going to be filling out this final election prediction map. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I am a field director out of the state of Wisconsin. I have personally knocked thousands of doors across the state, and more recently, in the last couple of months, I've been managing a team of canvassers that have knocked on thousands and thousands of doors across the state. I think we've hit probably about 50 to 60,000 doors at the bare minimum from one end of the state to the other. And with that being said, I'm going to do my best to kind of help you guys cut through a lot of the political chaff out there, stuff that's not entirely accurate from one side or the other, and I'm going to try to do my best to give you all an accurate view of what's going on, not just in the state of Wisconsin or the Rust Belt, but across the entire country. And with that being said, if you all do enjoy political content and want to learn more about politics, not just at the local level, but at the federal level as well, remember to leave a like on the video, hit that red subscribe button, and smash that notification bell to never miss out on another upload. And with that being said, let's get started. So the first thing I want to do real quick is fill out the safe states for both candidates. Now for Kamala Harris, she's going to carry a lot of these deep blue states in the West. She's going to carry a lot of these mid-Atlantic blue states and a lot of these deep blue New England states, including Maine's 1st Congressional District and the state of Vermont. Vermont's probably one of the most blue states out there. But overall, these are a lot of the safe blue states that you're going to see on election night going to Kamala Harris by 12 percentage points or more. Now for the safe states for Trump, I do think he's going to carry states like South Carolina, West Virginia, a lot of these deep red southern states, a lot of these Bible Belt states, and these Great Plains states. They're all going to go red. Once again, the interior Rocky Mountains states, including Alaska and Iowa. These are all states I think Trump won't have much of a problem winning, and I think he would also probably carry Maine's 2nd Congressional District. We can now move on to the likely states for both candidates. We'll go ahead and start off with the likely states for Kamala Harris. Now, first state she's going to carry by a likely margin is the state of Oregon. And the reason I say this is really when you look at the polls out of a state like California, Kamala Harris is only winning her home state of California by 23.7 percentage points. Now, this is significant because Joe Biden carried the state by almost 30 points. Clinton actually carried California by 30 points. And an interesting thing to take note of is also New York, 22 for Clinton, 23 for Biden. And if you look at the state of New York and the RCP average, it's only 17 points. So this is not just something isolated to the polling in California. This is something we're seeing in two of the most blue states across the country. And this is also something, by the way, that when you take note of, it will affect New Jersey. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tie these polls in from New York and California into how it plays into Oregon and New Jersey. Now, when you look at the historic data we have from Oregon, Biden won Oregon by 16 percentage points. And if you apply this drop-off in support from California to Oregon, we see that Harris is probably only going to carry the state by 11 points, which would put it in the likely column. And same deal for New Jersey. If you take away about 5 points from Biden's win back in 2020, you get about a 10-point win for Kamala Harris in the state of New Jersey. So that pretty much sums up all of the likely states for Kamala Harris. Now, moving on to the likely states for Trump, I think he's going to carry the state of Texas by about 9 percentage points. Now, this is a state that has been shifting to the left in recent election cycles. A lot of the metros have grown quite a bit compared to what they were 20 years ago. DFW was actually relatively competitive. If you look down at Austin, this is another metro that has just shifted so far to the left from 20 years ago. Look at what it is now. It's insane. But if you look at southern Texas itself, it's actually shifted to the right. For example, look at how much this county shifted just from 2020 to 2016. It's been about a 30-point shift, which is insane. And southern Texas is very much a Latino part of the state, and Latinos have been breaking for Trump, which is exactly why Trump is in line to carry the state of Florida by a likely margin as well. Now, this is not really that much of a surprise for anybody who's watching this video because Republicans have made so many gains across the state. It's not even that competitive. If you look at the polling in RCP, I believe it's like a 9-point win. Okay, so it's an 8-point win for Trump, which is really insane to think about. If you brought this up like 5 or 6 years ago, people would have been like, no, Florida's a swing state. But no, Trump's going to carry the state by just under probably 9 or 10 points. And I would say for Ohio, I would say that this is a state that Trump's probably going to win, probably by about 10 to 11 points. I know the RCP average for Ohio has been a little bit trash. And the reason I say that is just because At 7 points, I don't think so, because if you look at 2020, Ohio went to Trump by 8 points. If you look at 2016, it was about the same. And just based off of the data we have to work with, I think that Trump's going to improve a little bit, especially with JD Vance at the top of the ticket. So I really do think that Trump's going to carry Ohio by probably about 10 points. Now that we've filled out all of the safe and likely states for both candidates, we can now move on to the lean states. Now, to be specific, the lean states are states that are going to go to either candidate by 1 to 5 percentage points. For example, I do think that Kamala Harris is going to carry Maine at large by around 5 percentage points. I also think she's going to carry New Hampshire by 1 to 5 percentage points. I'd probably say when it comes down to New Hampshire, I think RCP is probably right about New Hampshire being about a 3.5 point win. When it comes down to states like New Hampshire and Maine, does Trump have an outside chance of winning both of these states? Absolutely. Is it very probable? Absolutely not. When it comes to New Hampshire, though, one thing to take a look at is 2016. The state was the second closest state out of all of the competitive states. So there is an outside chance that Trump could win this state, but don't hold your breath. It's probably not going to happen. Another state that Trump is probably not going to be able to win is New Mexico. This is a state that definitely has a lot that works in the GOP's favor. For example, it's a border state. There's a Hispanic majority, and the GOP has done very well in recent years with the Hispanic vote. But at the end of the day, this is still a very favorable state for Kamala Harris, and I just don't think Trump has what it takes to flip the state. And the same goes for Minnesota. Tim Walz is the vice presidential candidate that is running with Kamala Harris, and because he is the governor of this state, I just don't think she's going to lose this state. Republicans have made it very competitive, and it's really hard to tell what exactly will happen in Minnesota. It is below 5 percentage points on RCP, and then again, when you look at the Minnesota map, again, it's as somebody who lives in Wisconsin and who's worked in the rural parts of Wisconsin, I can tell you guys, getting an accurate poll reading out of, let's say, this rural part of the state would be very, very challenging. And I can tell you guys right now, I've worked in rural Wisconsin. I've worked in places like Marinette. I've worked way out in Oneida. And I can tell you guys right now, it is really, really, really hard to reach these voters out here to get an accurate, sample size. So it's not, and that's why the polls are always so off in Wisconsin. And they've been so awful every single cycle. And when it comes down to Minnesota, I just don't think the state is going to go red this time. And I also don't think that Republicans really have a good chance of flipping back the 2nd Congressional District of Nebraska. This is just a really, really blue part of the state. It's pretty much the metro part of Omaha is encompassed in this district, and cities do tend to go blue. And that's pretty much that when it comes down to that district. Now, when it comes down to Virginia, this is the last lean state for Kamala Harris. I just don't see Trump flipping this state. I will say this. Virginia is probably the closest of the lean states on this map, and it's very, very possible in a really good scenario for Trump that he flips the state, but I just don't think it's going to happen this time around. Now, moving on to the lean states for Trump, I do think he's going to carry North Carolina by probably 1 to 3 percentage points. And if you look at North Carolina historically, Trump won it in 2020, he won it in 2016, Romney won it back in 2012, and Obama did win the state in 2008. But just keep in mind, he carried Indiana by more of a significant margin than North Carolina, Ohio by a more significant margin, Iowa by a more significant margin. Heck, even Florida went to Obama by a more significant margin than North Carolina. North Carolina is one of those states that is incredibly difficult for the Democrats to win, similar to maybe Minnesota or New Mexico. It's a competitive state, but it's not a state that is a state where Democrats are readily able to win consistently. I would also argue that Arizona is also going to go for Trump this time around. Yes, Biden did win it this last time, and I can tell you guys several things. Number one, Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden. She is a weaker candidate. We've seen that with the polls that are out of California and New York, and we're seeing that across the country when it comes to some of these states, especially some of these competitive Sunbelt states. Arizona has been a Republican state for a long time, and I just don't think that Kamala Harris is going to be able to beat Trump in Arizona this time around. And the last lean state on the map I'm going to give to Trump is my home state of Wisconsin. And honestly, I think that Trump's going to win the state by about 1.3 percentage points. And I'm going to show you guys why that is. The polls out of Wisconsin are always awful. They always overestimate the Democrats. They do not know how to pull the rural parts of the state. And I'm telling you guys, I live here and I know what I'm talking about. It's ridiculous. They always screw it up somehow. They always manage to screw it up. Wisconsin, if they're saying it's 0.3, it's probably not that. I mean, if we applied the 2020 error of 6 points, then Wisconsin wouldn't even be a lean state. It'd be a likely state. But I do think that it's probably going to go to Trump by about 1 to 2 points. I think that's very reasonable. We are now down to the last 4 competitive states. These are states that will go to either candidate by 1 percentage point or less. So these are the tilt states. And I do think right off the bat, I think Trump is the slight favorite to win the state of Nevada. I think he'll carry it by probably about half a point. The polls in Nevada have him up by 1. The polls are all over the place, and it's kind of hard to say whether or not these polls are accurate. Now, one thing that I would look at personally is the gubernatorial race that we had out of the state of Nevada. And Republicans did actually manage to flip the governorship, and Republicans came pretty close to beating the Democrats in the Senate race in Nevada. So to me, it's very feasible for Trump to flip the state. Trump has done very well with Latinos, and Republicans in general have done a whole lot better with the Hispanic vote, and that's something that's going to play into Trump winning Nevada. Now, moving over to the last 3 states, and these 3 states really are the most consequential of the remaining states, because if you're Kamala Harris, you have to win all 3 states to become the next president, and if you're Donald Trump, you only need to win 1. And he would be the next president. So obviously Trump is heavily favored by this map, and if I'm right, then he definitely isn't in a really good position, and I believe I am right based off of the data. And even if you take Nevada out of the aggregate, Trump only would need to win Michigan, which, with an exception of Nevada, has the least amount of electoral votes. He just makes it with 271 electoral votes, but I do think that Trump, again, is favored to win Nevada. So moving on from the state of Nevada, moving over to Michigan, I do think that Kamala Harris, out of the 3 remaining states, she probably is the favorite to win the state. I think it'll be close. I think that Trump has a good shot at winning the state, but I do think that she is the favorite nonetheless. And out of the big 7 swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, Michigan's probably the most liberal and blue out of the above named swing states. So as of right now, I think Kamala Harris is the favorite to win, which means she needs to win Pennsylvania and Georgia to become the next president. Trump just needs to win 1 of the 2 remaining states. And out of the 2 remaining states, I do think that Trump has a fairly decent chance of flipping Georgia back. Now, in 2020, Joe Biden managed to win the state by a very narrow margin, and the polls currently do have Trump up by 2.5 percentage points. However, when you look back at 2020, you'll see a very serious polling error. That's about 1.5 points. So as of right now, I think Trump probably will carry the state of Georgia by about maybe 0.4 or 0.5 percentage points. I think it's going to be very, very close. I think maybe half a percentage point at the most. It's going to be very, very, very tight. And when you look at the swingometer, you just adjust some of these metrics. I do think that Republicans are going to do better with white working class voters. And I do think that we're going to see kind of a shift in the African American vote just by a little bit. And then that Hispanic vote's probably going to shift to around 40%. And ignoring Pennsylvania, because I think that this model is not very accurate for Pennsylvania. I think that overall we see North Carolina is a lean state. I think that this model is a little overestimating Republican strength in Georgia. I think it's about right in Arizona. I think it's probably right in Nevada, but I think it's also probably right in Michigan as well. And when it comes to Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is that state that it truly is a pure toss-up state. It's really hard to say because Trump did win the state back in 2016, but then in 2020 he lost it. Joe Biden did have a unique point of strength in northeastern Pennsylvania, and he did manage to take Erie County. And the question is, will Trump be able to flip the state back? Will he be able to flip Erie County back? This is a bellwether county. Will he be able to do a little bit better in northeastern Pennsylvania now that Biden is off the ticket? I think he's probably going to do a little bit better regardless of whether or not Biden was off or on the ticket. And I think he's going to do better. I don't know if he will do good enough to win. What does work in Kamala Harris's favor is the fact that Governor Josh Shapiro is a Democrat and he is fairly popular. He is more popular than, let's say, J.B. Pritzker in Illinois or Governor Gavin Newsom in California. So at the end of the day, I don't know which way the state of Pennsylvania will go. If you had to ask me, I would say that it's a very, very, very narrow margin in favor for Trump. I think he's very narrowly favored in Pennsylvania, but it could really go either way. I mean, if Kamala Harris won the state, I would not be surprised whatsoever. If Trump won it, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. This, honestly, if there was a third category called too close to call, I would put Pennsylvania in that category because it is that close. And yes, the polls do have Trump up, but at the end of the day, the polls have been all over the place, and it's hard to say. I will say that if we look at the prehistoric polls, let's say back in 2020, they were spot on. So on RCP, could Trump win this state? Maybe. It's hard to say. It really, really is hard to say. I'm going to go ahead and say that Trump is narrowly favored. With Biden off the ticket, I feel like that's going to be something that is just too much for Kamala Harris to overcome. And if she had chosen Josh Shapiro to be her running mate instead of Tim Walz, maybe she would have a better chance to win this state. But anyways, guys, I think that this is going to conclude this video. My final prediction is 297 to 241. However, I will say that Pennsylvania is a state that, in my opinion, is too close to call. But with that being said, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Remember to leave a like on the video, hit that red subscribe button, and smash that notification bell down below to never miss out on another upload. And with that being said, have a good rest of the day, and get out and vote.